Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and there may be a bit of guest starring from Juicy, the big fat stupid ginger cat in this video, because she's got herself parked right on top of my mouse mat, right next to her pappy where she's having a really good purr. and, you may hear her at certain points throughout this video. Her tail's giving my keyboard a damn good thrashing at the moment as well. I suppose I could move her, but, well, she's kind of happy where she is, and I really need to get this video done, so we're just going to have to put up with it. Anyway, the hero of today's story, in the Japanese Tier 10 battleship, the Yamato, is thermal mode, and thermal mode likes saying diddly-do a lot. I'm not suggesting he has a limited vocabulary, but, well, let's just say he knows what words he likes, and he likes what words he knows. Although shouldn't that be diddle-dee-do, rather than diddle-e-do? You know, I'm not actually sure on the precise vocabulary here. Let's see your opinions in the comments. Not to be confused with diddly-dee, of course, as in, hey diddly-dee, a sailor's life for me. No, that's an entirely different word. Not to be confused with diddly-do, or even diddle-dee-do, you know, whichever the correct word is. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt. So, the Yamato, until very recently, the ship with the biggest guns in the game. It's now been eclipsed, well, sort of been eclipsed by the new Japanese Tier 10 premium, the Shikishima, which is equipped with 510mm guns, although it only has 6 of them, and I still think that while the Yamato doesn't have the biggest guns in the game anymore, it's still got the best. As well as having 3 guns more than the Shikishima, the Yamato's 18.1-inch guns just generally outperform the Shikishima's 20-inch guns. Particularly against cruisers, where the Yamato's guns tend to penetrate and deal citadels, the Shikishima's ridiculously high penetration tends to result in an awful lot of overpens. As well as that, the Shikishima's 20-inch guns tend to have worse vertical dispersion, which results in a lot of shots either dropping short or going long, and clustering and bracketing the target rather than hitting them, and when you're only firing 6 shots in the first place, you can't really afford those kind of misses. This is not an issue that you tend to have with the Yamato, as thermal mode is about to demonstrate as he snaps off 6 shots with his 2 front turrets at the enemy Riga over there. The Riga's about to slip into cover, but he is rewarded with 3 hits. One of them a full penetration. The Shikishima in the same situation, taking the same shots at the same target. Well, for a start it would have only been 4 shots because only the front 2 turrets were able to be brought to bear. You would have probably only gotten 1 hit, and it would almost certainly have been an over-penetration. Meanwhile, the friendly Fantask up ahead is launching some extremely optimistic torpedoes against the enemy Vladivostok, who appears to have realised that he has just become thermal mode's second target, and is resisting the urge to take the same course that the Riga did, because that would expose his flat broadside against the Yamato's guns. So he's angling in, which is absolutely the right choice. Meanwhile, the team have already lost their first 2 destroyers, with the team's Jutland falling victim to the enemy Grozovoy, and the team's Shimakaze falling victim to the enemy Akizuki. So a fairly typical start to the match, at least as far as the destroyers are concerned, and I have to admit it is pretty impressive that they managed to get themselves killed so quickly without there even being an aircraft carrier in play. Meanwhile, thermal mode, with the positions of 2 of the 3 enemy destroyers located, one at capture point A and one at capture point B, thermal mode is probably expecting the 3rd and final enemy destroyer to be lurking somewhere down there to the south. And with the majority of the enemy ships on this side of the map spotted thus far, all heading down the no battleships channel, here on the north map, thermal mode's heading down here as well, which is kind of understandable because that's where the targets are. First, the enemy Riga. Now, we did just catch the back end of his radar, which means he should be perfectly aware that thermal mode is coming. Let's see what he does. He's about to get spotted in the open. Oh dear. Well, he is going to try angling away as best he can, but that's a bad spot to be caught in, and quite frankly, he's lucky to get away with a mere 8,000 damage. Enemy Amalfi spotted on the horizon. Here comes the semi-armor piercing. Minimal damage sustained. Does the Riga have torpedoes? I have to admit, I didn't actually know, and I had to go and look it up. It doesn't have torpedoes. I suspect that thermal mode was thinking exactly the same thing, and just to be on the safe side, he starts angling away as well, getting the island with no battleship sign between him and any torpedoes that might have been launched by the Riga against him. But of course the Riga does not have torpedoes, so he doesn't really have to worry. At the same time, angling away doesn't really help against semi-armour piercing shells. But then again, the Amalfis also stopped shooting at him, even though he's detected. I guess cruisers just really don't like getting shot at by Yamatos. It's about here where a couple of interesting things happen. First, the Riga decides that he actually does like getting shot at by Yamatos by giving his position away there when he was perfectly safe. And secondly, oh look, torpedoes, not from the Riga, but from the enemy ice, the Jutland. So Thermal Mode's decision to take cover behind the island was actually a very smart thing to do, in direct contrast to what that Riga is doing. And quite frankly, he was lucky to not get ended right there and then by Thermal Mode, but he did get ended right there and then. But he did get ended by the friendly Montana. Who would have guessed that revealing your position while broadside on to not one but two Tier 10 battleships while pinned up against an island and unable to angle away was actually a bad idea? So the enemy team are now down 2 cruisers, having lost their Alexander Nevsky earlier, which means they now have no radar. Meanwhile, the enemy Amalfi, who apparently didn't just see what happened to the Riga, decides that he's going to try his luck broadsiding the Yamato, with results that are as predictable as they are amusing. That never gets old. That was a paddling, by the way. Yeah. So the loss of the Alexander Nevsky and the Riga is fantastic news for the friendly Fantask, the only surviving destroyer on the team, who was able to flip Capture Point Charlie completely uncontested despite the threat that should have been posed by the enemy ice, the Jutland, who's lurking around down there and keeps getting spotted every now and then. Not quite sure what he's doing, but he's certainly done nothing to stop the Fantask from spotting. And has in fact, but yeah, he's still trying to torpedo Thermal Mode. Well, of course he is. Well, I hope he's going to get used to living with disappointment, because that just ain't going to happen. Top tip, it's also an extremely bad idea in a destroyer that does not have a smokescreen to be sitting still in open water while you're spotted. Yeah, he's starting to move now, but I'm afraid he's a day late and a couple of kroner short. There's kill number 2. The enemy team do still have 2 destroyers. An Akazuki, who's been doing extremely well, and a Grozovoi. The Akazuki hasn't been spotted in some time, but he was last seen all the way over on the western end of the map, and the Grozovoi has just been located, still in the middle of the map at Capture Point Bravo. So there shouldn't be any torpedo threat over here for Thermal Mode to worry about, and the enemy Vladivostok has just run out of friends and is going to have to start getting out of here. He does have a bit of a problem though, because there's a Fantask waiting to torpedo him if he tries to withdraw directly to the west. And if he doesn't withdraw directly to the west, there's a Yamato closing in on him. I think he's probably decided to try to just hold position there and wait for the big guns to back him up, because there are several extremely large enemy battleships heading in this direction. But if the Vladivostok is waiting for backup, I think he's going to have to wait a long time, because those enemy battleships don't appear to be in any rush to get over here and are slowing down to take shots at the rest of Thermal Mode's team up to the northwest of this position, which means the Vladivostok is forced to try to make a break for it. Again, very lucky that he only lost half of his remaining health. But again, he's got the problem of, how do I get away? Because if I have to turn away, that's going to involve, yep, turning around to give broadside to a Yamato. Under the circumstances, I think his best option was to continue to the left-hand side of that island and try to get behind it. Because this is not going to do him any favours. He's going to have to turn and expose his belt armour, or run aground on the island. Maybe he thinks he can out-heal the incoming damage. Guess what? He can't. Under the circumstances, that's probably the best thing he could do. Just angled, beached himself up against the island and try to weather the incoming fire. Trying to buy some time for his team to get the lead out and actually get over here. I have to give the Vladivostok credit, this is a good plan. The problem is Thermal Mode isn't falling for it. He can look at the minimap as well as anybody else, and he knows that if he closes in on the Vladivostok, he's going to expose himself to a crossfire from the rest of those enemy battleships. So he's just not going to do that until the Vladivostok has been taken care of. So well played to the Vladivostok. Made the most of a really bad situation there. Unfortunately for him, the rest of his team were in no rush whatsoever to come to his aid, as that would have involved exposing themselves to crossfire from the rest of Thermal Mode's team just up there to the northwest of his current position. Now what's going to happen next? Thermal Mode's going to have to stop and think about this, because there are 3 enemy battleships around this corner, a Musashi, a Thunderer and an Iowa, and they're almost certainly backed up by a Grozavoy. The good news is that Des Moines is still alive and in a perfect position to give radar cover. The bad news is that the rest of the surviving ships up to the immediate northwest have all kind of ducked into cover behind islands and are only really popping out to take the occasional pot shot. So if there's any heavy lifting to be done in the immediate future, Thermal Mode is probably going to have to be the one to do it. Now in a Yamato, this is the dangerous part, not just because he doesn't yet know where that Grozavoy is, which is why he's launching his catapult fighters just in case he's lurking around the corner, but also coming around a corner like this in a Yamato exposes the cheek armour underneath the front turrets, which are extremely vulnerable to citadel damage if any battleships are paying attention, which is why he's taking this nice and slow. The Grozavoy has now been spotted. There goes the Des Moines radar. Okay, this is good. The Fantastic is trying to sneak around for some torpedo shots to catch those enemy battleships in a crossfire, and despite the fact that he's spotted, everybody still seems to be shooting at the Des Moines. The Des Moines, who has spotted the Grozavoy inside the smokescreen and should easily be capable of taking him out, although possibly not capable of surviving the return fire from those enemy battleships, all of whom are focused on him. Thermal Mode taking the opportunity to line some shots upon the enemy Musashi, who's basically a tier 9 Yamato with exactly the same guns, hit points and armour layout, although the guns aren't quite as accurate. He's still a little bit too far away to smash the shots right through the Musashi's bows and citadel him from the front, which these 18.1 inch guns can absolutely do. But now the Iowa is giving him a much better target to shoot at, and I like this. He's switching targets to the Iowa. Nice big flat broadside to shoot at. The Iowa's shooting at him, but I guarantee this is going to hurt the Iowa a lot more than the Iowa is capable of hurting the Yamato. Shots out. Yeah. He's starting to take some fire from the Akazuki on the far side of the island. There's not a lot he can do about that. Thermal Mode's slowing, so he doesn't have to fight the Musashi, the Thunderer and the Iowa all at the same time. And I, again, love the way he picks the targets. Rather than focusing on the Musashi, who's on the lowest health, he goes for the target he can do the most damage to, which is the Thunderer. Now he doesn't get any citadels, but that's a satisfying chunk of damage. As both the Musashi and the Thunderer open up on him at what is basically point-blank range, he does take a large chunk of damage in return, but he doesn't die, which is what would probably have happened if he tried to angle and take those hits on his belt armour, again because of the vulnerability of the cheek armour of the Yamato underneath those 2 front turrets. Keep the Yamato nose in. In any other battleship, other than the Musashi, you would angle to try to bounce the shots on your belt, but that's a suicidal move in the Yamato, thanks to those cheek armour vulnerabilities. The Thunderer is trying to do exactly that and take those shots on his belt, but he's angled a little bit too much, which is making him a very inviting target, but not nearly as inviting a target as the Musashi behind him has just made himself. I'd really like to see Thermal Mode switch to the Musashi here, because he can kill him, but instead he continues to focus on the Thunderer. And the Thunderer can't do the kind of damage to him from that kind of range and angle that the Musashi can. He really needs to kill that Musashi, and he absolutely can kill the Musashi with just one of his turrets. Luckily, the Musashi is actually making things a bit easier for Thermal Mode than he needs to by insisting on continuing to steam out in order to try to find a broadside to shoot at when he doesn't actually need to. He just needs to do, well, that and aim under the turrets from that kind of angle. He could have finished Thermal Mode. Thermal Mode was extremely unlucky not to finish the Musashi, but he's able to swing the arse around to get the rear turret firing while still staying mostly safe against the Thunderer. Oh, that was a poor decision. He should have just pumped the shot straight into the bow like that. There we go. He's got him eventually. He's on the barest sliver of health, and he needs to straighten the ship out again so the Thunderer can't slap shots right through his cheek armour. Unfortunately, the replay kind of craps out a little here as the secondaries are still blazing away, but then it picks up again. The Thunderer aiming for the cheek armour under the turrets, but Thermal Mode just managed to... I honestly thought that would have killed him, but he must have just managed to straighten the angle out enough and finishes off the Thunderer with the return salvo. There's the Kraken Unleashed and the High Caliber Award. That was pretty impressive. Not entirely error-free, although once again I must stress that it's very easy to sit here and point out mistakes from the comfort and safety of watching a replay file. It's a lot easier to make the wrong decision in the heat of battle, and the only real bad decision that he made there was delaying switching to the Musashi and continuing to attempt to sink the Thunderer when the Musashi was a much more sure bet. He took a lot of unnecessary damage from the Musashi there that he could have avoided, but at the end of the day they're all dead and he isn't. So he got the job done, even if he didn't do it in as clinically efficient a way as possible. And the only real mistake he made was putting one salvo into the Thunderer when it would have been better used on the Musashi. Where's the Iowa, by the way? I mean, we haven't seen the Iowa. There he is. The reason we haven't seen the Iowa is because thermal mode slowed down and used this island, so that the Iowa couldn't get involved in the fight. And oh look, he's still giving broadside. Oh, well, of course he is. Why is he giving broadside? Well, he's got to tank the high explosive shells being fired by the Lion. Seriously, if you've got a choice of two ships shooting at you, one of them's a Lion firing high explosive, the other one's a Yamato firing armor piercing, please, if you're on the enemy team, always make sure that you point the bows of your ship towards the Lion and give broadside like that to the Yamato. And there's kill number 6. The amusing thing here is that despite being reduced to 2 ships against 6, the enemy team are still more than 100 points ahead. And because they've held on to 2 of those caps for so long, and it's only now that the team are finally starting to flip the central cap at Bravo. You might think that with less than 4 minutes of the game remaining and a 100-point lead, it would be a good idea for those 2 enemy ships to stop shooting and try to just hide. Run away, run down the timer and win on points. But with the central cap being flipped, 3.5 minutes is too much time. If there was a minute or a minute and a half left, that might actually be a viable strategy, but there isn't a minute and a half left. Running away and hiding, if there'd been enough time, or little enough time left, may have been an option for the Yoshino, but he's about to run into the map border anyway, and therefore run out of places to run. It's not really an option for a ship the size of the Grosser Kurfürst, who's now in secondary gun battery range. I mean, that is a big ship. It's fast, but it's big. It's one of the few man-made objects that's actually visible from the surface of the moon. So running away and hiding is never going to be an option for him, even if he had the time, which he doesn't. These 2 surviving enemy ships need to kill something to buy themselves the time that they need, and they need to not die. And I don't really see that happening. They do certainly try, but, well, they're outnumbered 3-1, they're both spotted, they're both visible, they're both on low health, and they're both running out of places to run to. And they've both got some extremely large and angry battleships shooting at them. The Grosser Kurfürst is the first victim of the friendly Montana's 16-inch armor piercing. That's his 2nd kill for the game. And the Yoshino, who seems to be doing his level best to escape to the Okinawa map, but can't because he's being spotted by the rune, catches the next salvo of 16-inch armor piercing from the Montana, which is his 3rd and final kill of the game. But the real MVP here is definitely thermal mode, with an almost textbook display of how to Yamato. One minor error, but he survived it, his opponents didn't, so who are we to judge? So well done thermal mode on an extremely well-deserved victory. It was a pleasure to watch you play. Thank you so much for sending that one in. Everyone else, you know the score. I hope you enjoyed it, because that's it for today. And as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.